Chun-Li jacket on. New kicks too, call me Kim Capable. Got my bread up and nothing jigger stack it on. Bills doing keto, they ain't even stacking on. Out of hustle, different continents. Foreign exchange trades and I ain't got no common sense. No features like I can't take a compliment. Committed to the game, but hard to be monogamous. Too many fish in the sea and I wanna see them. Gotta be at the top the way to be up in my DM.
Splash.
Handle my own lane, ain't got no time for being. Already in the car, let's go. And on my toilet paper, 2-ply. Pretend to fall through when you wishing for a blue sky. And on my toilet paper, 2-ply. Pretend to fall through when you wishing for a blue sky. And on my toilet paper, 2-ply. Pretend to fall through when you wishing for a blue sky. And on my toilet paper, 2-ply. Man.
Yo, what's up? What's good? I'm probably going to be coughing throughout this whole thing. I caught my mom's cold. My mom got a cold, and I caught a piece of it. So I'm not, like, super sick yet, at least. It looks like I just got a cough. But I didn't want to not do the podcast. I'll probably, like, when we transition into, like, what we're doing today, I'll probably just pause and finish this coffee up really quick so you guys don't have to hear it moving around in my mouth. But I was coughing, like, really fucking bad right before this started, so I needed one. But this is the 40 Ounce Fridays podcast, episode 29. So we're still early in season 2, getting things started, still transitioning into this new structure, but we got a lot to go over, so I'm going to try my best not to ramble, but you know how my rambles be. So today, like, the main topic is going to be my review overall of Valkyria Chronicles 4. If you guys remember, I was talking about it a few weeks ago, and last week I said, oh, I'll just do a review of that, because that's just something I finished. I finished that game, the main story at least. I still got I got like one more story DLC to get through, and then I have, like, the special op missions, but apparently the special op missions are extremely hard. So I need to finish all the hard missions first, then work my way up towards those. Those should be, like, some of the last things I should do, apparently. So that'll be a slow process. But in terms of the main storyline, I have the main storyline done. And there's only one more, like, little DLC side story I have to do. But I like the side stories because it gives more insight to certain characters and certain events and things like that. So it's cool. So I'll give my overall review of that. And I'm also going to try, if I have the time, to do brief first impressions on Tales of Vesperia. I got the definitive edition of Tales of Vesperia around the same time I got Valkyria Chronicles 4. They were both on a sale during Christmas time. I believe because I got the DLC with Valkyria Chronicles 4, so I believe Valkyria Chronicles 4 was $25 as well, because Tales of Vesperia was $25. I also picked up the first Valkyria Chronicles for the Switch for $10, so that was a cool pickup too. But I'll probably, like, play the first Valkyria Chronicles a little later. There's some other stuff I want to play first. And Valkyria Chronicles is an overall exhausting experience, so there's that whole thing. And also we're going to start the whole Yu Yu Hakusho episode review retrospective kind of thing, where weekly I'll just talk about an episode of Yu Yu Hakusho I watched. So we're going to go through in order. So that's going to last a long time because there's 112 episodes of Yu Yu Hakusho. I mean, that's not a lot compared to other long-running shonen animes, but if we're doing once a week, that's going to last us a long time. So we'll see how that goes. But first we're going to do the quick news thing. So let's do some quick news. Alright, so cough drop out of the way. Some of the quick news I wanted to just briefly go over. You guys probably already heard about this stuff, but Final Fantasy VII Remake has been delayed. It's been pushed back from, I believe it was supposed to come out March 3rd of this year. It is now coming out April 10th of this year. So, about a month of the delay. Not a huge delay, but still, people were bummed about it. I am too, but at the same time, I'd rather wait a little longer so they can make sure the game is as polished and as good to go as possible before releasing it out into the wild like that. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, they're just doing this." I'm just like, dude, who cares? It's just if they're just doing it to like have a better release window to challenge other game releases, then who cares? That just means they still have more time to work on it and get it done. Which I don't think they would do. Like, why the fuck would they do that? There's no reason to do that. But yeah, so that got pushed back. That also gives me more time to play other stuff. Because I do want to eventually get 3 houses once I'm done with Tales of Vesperia. And that's because some other news that came up. But we'll get to that real quick. So that got pushed back. Another Square Enix title that got pushed back was the Marvel Avengers game that they've been working on. I believe got pushed back into September. I don't know when it was supposed to come out, because to be honest with you, I'm not super interested in it. I might like check it out, or if like, you know, a demo shows up or something to play, I might check it out, but it's not something on my radar that I'm looking to pick up, to be honest. But that's just me, personally. I'm not much of like, I like comic books, but it's like, I'm not as into comic books as I am into manga and anime. But, and also I'm more of a DC fan than a Marvel fan. I still really love Marvel stuff. Like, I have, like, some posters of some Marvel stuff on my wall as I speak right now. But, it's just one of those things where the game's not captivating me enough also. Because there's still, like, you know, Marvel games, like Marvel vs. Capcom, and just, you know, Ultimate Alliance stuff. The Lego Marvel stuff. Like, those games definitely catch my attention. This one just isn't. Maybe I just need to see more. And if they're working on it and pushing the date back, hopefully they're putting in the work to really get there. What is that buzzing? That might just be me. Hopefully that doesn't show up on the audio. But I'm like, what is that noise? But yeah, I'd rather them, again, it's one of those things where I'd rather wait it out, see what happens to it. A third game that got pushed back on release date, that a lot of people were bummed out about, the highly anticipated Cyberpunk 2077. CD Projekt Red's next upcoming title. That game looks really fucking good. I've been getting more and more intrigued by it ever since it got announced. And it's not even like personal taste in it. It's just like, I'm not too into like a lot of certain games of that genre, but that game just looks like there's so much to do and enjoy. Excuse me. And when I say that genre, I just mean like first person stuff. I'm not like super into it, but that game looks so good. You can't even, regardless of what you're like really into, you can't say that game doesn't look good. So I'm actually anticipating that, but it also, I believe, got pushed back to September. I believe that's when it's gotten delayed. Again, one of those things where I'd rather just wait on it if they're working on it to make it better. If something else came up, something else might have come up. I saw like an article title talking about like a backfire or like a drawback delaying Cyberpunk 2077 can cause. I didn't read it though, so I'm not, don't take my word that there is a negative, because I don't know if there is or not, because I was just scrolling. I didn't read the story. I didn't believe it because I didn't read it. So I'm not going to be like, oh, this is facts. Like, I'm not the type of person that reads an article title and believes the article title. You actually got to, you know, go in and read, do your research. But yeah, that also got delayed. So yeah, three, I would say anticipated. Well, two are definitely like highly, highly anticipated. The FF7 remake and Cyberpunk are definitely highly anticipated. People are anticipating the Marvel Avengers game. I don't think it's as hyped as Cyberpunk or the FF7 remake, though. I think those are like the more like highly anticipated games for this year. Other quick news though. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot launched today. Some people got it early. You know, some content creators. 2 content creators I know and watch a lot, Rhymestyle and Syriax on YouTube. Sorry, excuse me. They got their hands on it early, and they've been putting up little gameplay videos. I only watched their first episodes of it, but from what I saw in the first episode, it looks like a fun time. Like, I know a lot of people are like, it's just going to be whatever, the same story rehashed, but it's just like, hey man, it's the story rehashed in a way like in a format we haven't seen before. Like, one thing people say about Dragon Ball games is that it's just the same story and over. I'm like, yeah, but at least they, like, when they make another Dragon Ball game, usually, unless it's, like, a part of a series, like the Budokai series, they all play kind of different. Like, the Budokai series plays different from the Budokai Tenkaichi series. And then Raging Blast and Budokai Tenkaichi kind of play similar. It's kind of like a successor to that series, but you get what I'm saying. Like, you have the Budokai series, the Budokai Tenkaichi series, very different games. You have, like, stuff like the Legacy of Goku series, which this kind of feels like a Legacy of Goku 4, like a remastered of that old trilogy. That's what it feels like an open world RPG, but it's like 3D and all these crazy graphics. That's what I get the vibes from when I see the gameplay of it. I'm like, this is like Legacy of Goku's trilogy remastered into like this cool little full experience RPG game. You have Dragon Ball Fusions. That was on the 3DS. If you guys haven't played Dragon Ball Fusions, I'd say give it a shot. Original storyline, character creation, really unique, cool Dragon Ball Z RPG experience involving like fusions as one of the big things. It's really dope. It's something that I haven't seen before, so especially coming from a Dragon Ball series, or a Dragon Ball game. You have the Xenoverse series, which is another different thing. Fighters. And you gotta think, like, Fusions, Xenoverse, and Fighters don't follow the original Dragon Ball Z storyline. They have their own original stories. You can say Xenoverse still goes through the timeline of the original story, but even still, they have their own plot and their own villains and things like that. So we actually haven't seen a Dragon Ball game that just went through the regular Dragon Ball Z storyline in a good long time. Because what came out before Xenoverse? Battle of Z? That was a while back. And then before that, it was like Dragon Ball Z for the Kinect and Ultimate Tenkaichi. So they were kind of like some really shitty Dragon Ball games that came out before we got Xenoverse. And say what you will about Xenoverse and Xenoverse 2, they're probably some of the best-selling Dragon Ball games to ever be released. So, hate it or love it, it's making money. So, and this isn't even just talking about DLC. This is units sold. Like they've sold more than like Budokai 3 and Tenkaichi 3 and all that shit like that. I think Xenoverse and Xenoverse 2 have each sold about 5 million copies. And that's not combined, that's each of them. It's not 5 million between both games, it's 5 million for each games. Don't quote me, I need to go back and look it up again. But Sirius uploaded a video showing like the max sales of the most popular Dragon Ball games. So it was like Raging Blast 2, and then like Budokai Tenkaichi. I think Budokai 3 was like the closest thing to Xenoverse, the Xenoverse series, and it was like at 1 point something million. And then Xenoverse was 5 million, and Xenoverse 2 was about 5 million. So it's like, they've made a lot of money. So yeah, Kakarot comes out today. Hate it or love it, good or bad, I'm sure Kakarot's gonna make them some money because it's Dragon Ball. That's how it works. Also, for reviews, I've seen like people like, or articles, or people like post articles posting reviews about the game, which isn't crazy for people who get early access to it. But some of them were like reviews for people like had only played about 5 hours of the game. And they're like, this game in total sucks. I played about 5 hours. It's just like, so you haven't played the whole game. Like, don't listen to someone's review opinion if they haven't even finished the game. If they don't like the game after playing 5 hours and they want to turn it off, that's fully their decision. They should not be able to post a review to the public like that. Because you didn't fully experience the game. The whole point of reviewing the game is to go through the whole game and give us the general, you know, like, consensus, like, what's the word on it. If you only play 5 hours, don't post a review. Like, if it's a 40-hour game, just play the 40-hour game. And if you didn't like it, just say you didn't like it. That's respectable. Like, if you didn't like the game, but you played through the whole thing and put up a review about how you didn't like the game and why, cool. But just, yeah, make sure when you look up reviews, make sure they actually played the game. This doesn't just go for Dragon Ball Kakarot. This goes for, like, any game in general or anything in general. But yeah, my brother's gonna pick it up on the PS4 this weekend. He said he wants to buy it. That's why I wasn't gonna buy it, because I'm like, well, it's my PS4, so if I want to play it, I can hop on and play it. So maybe I'll give you some thoughts about that. I won't be like getting into it anytime soon, just because I'm playing Tales. But if it's like a short game, like if it's like a 40-hour playthrough, after I play Tales of Vesperia, I'll just hop on and play Kakarot really quick before I jump over to whatever I want to play next. So for games, that's about it for the quick news on that. Music-wise, I got one thing I wanted to bring up that I just caught. I wasn't paying attention, apparently. I believe it was today or yesterday, Dreamville released... Well, last year they released Revenge of the Dreamers 3. If you don't know what Dreamville is, it's pretty much Cole's label with all these other artists on Dreamville. They released this thing called Revenge of the Dreamers 3. It was an album with various artists all throughout. One of the best albums of last year. Probably my second favorite of last year. The only thing that beat that was, what was it called? The Lost Boy from YBN Cordae. Love that album. That was... And I'm a sucker for, like, you know, that solo work where you put all your heart and soul into that project. That's the only reason I beat it out. But Revenge of the Dreamers 3 is... Whew, if you haven't listened to that, please do. And also, if you're going to listen to it, you might as well listen to the Revenge of the Dreamers 3 Director's Cut, which is something they released either today or yesterday or something like that. But it has a bunch of extra tracks. I believe... The album by itself normally had like 16. This one has 30. So this has like 14 extra songs on it. And it's something like, usually when artists make long albums like that, or even groups, it kind of gets stale because it's either the same artist doing like 30 fucking songs. So, you know, like half of them, at least half, are going to be some throwaway tracks that just there to fill space. Whether it be an artist by itself, a band, or a group. But since it's so many various musical artists in Dreamville and some not even assigned to it, just like, you know, homies that got on some songs, you have a lot of variety. So even like listening to that 16 track, like the regular version album, you don't really get bored because you're usually hearing someone different all the time. Like if someone is on multiple songs, it's probably like no more than 2 or 3 tracks. Like I think in total, J. Cole was probably on like maybe like, you know, 4 or 5 out of the 16. And one of them was a solo song. One of them was Middle Child. But he was in Under the Sun. He was in Down Bad. Under the Sun is like the opening track. He was in Down Bad, which was the second track. He had a little verse in the song 1993, like right at the end. It's like really short. It's like a couple seconds. Middle Child, which was his song, and he had the last verse on the last track of the regular album, which is Sacrifices. So he opens up the album and he closes out the album, so it was really cool. But yeah, he was only on like 5 tracks, and it wasn't like only one of them he had multiple verses on, which was Middle Child. Every other track he was on, he had a verse. So like I'm saying, like you don't get bored because there's so many people on it. So you're always hearing someone different, and if it's a repeat of someone else, like, or someone going again on a different song, it's like, oh, well, I haven't heard him in like 4 songs, so it's whatever. So they can definitely probably have a 30-track project and you won't get bored. I'm going to listen to it after the podcast. So probably next week I'll like talk about it, give my thoughts on it. Be one of the first bigger things I've listened to this year. I haven't been like hopping on music a lot this year just because I've been getting busy setting things up for season 2 of the podcast and writing and all that. But that's music news. That's all I really have to say for that right now. Then anime-related stuff really quick. I just wanted to say, what am I going to be watching this year? These 2 shows have caught my attention. I haven't watched them yet, just like, you know, the little, promotional, like, posters or, like, pictures for, them have caught my attention. I believe, don't quote me on this, I don't have them with me, but I saw one is on Hulu, and I think the other one is on Crunchyroll. So I can just go on my Xbox and go on Crunchyroll. But I like just being on my Switch because it's easier for me. But the Switch only has Hulu. But I think one of them, the one that's also on Hulu is I think it's called ID Invaded or something like that. I don't really know much about it, but I don't know, like, the promotional, like, little poster picture for it, the promotional art for it, looked really interesting. And then, the other one, I think it's called... I forget what it's called. Oh, no. I had it in my head today, too. I was like, yeah, that one and that one. And I remembered the names of both. ID Invaded. And then, I don't remember what the other thing's called. But it looks like it has some, like, kind of, like, supernatural, detective-ish kind of look to it. When I go on Crunchyroll, it'll probably be on Crunchyroll, because I believe both of those have started. They have, like, at least 1 or 2 episodes up. So I'm just going to try to follow those right now and see how it goes. Oh my god, that was horrifying. I'm so sorry. That caught me off fucking guard. But, other than that, I don't have anything else on my radar, so if anyone wants to recommend something to me to watch that's out this season, I'd be down. In terms of stuff that's not out this season, but I'm probably gonna, like, watch. I'm watching My Hero, but the only reason I'm not, like, actively on it is just because I've already read that stuff. I'm, like, up to date on the manga. I might be, like, a chapter behind currently. But I'm up to date, so I already know that stuff. Infinite 100%. I was waiting for that to get animated since I read it. I don't care if I feel like I'm overhyping it. I don't give a fuck. That arc is my favorite arc of My Hero Academia by far. There's still some great stuff to come. Like, the next arc is, like, kind of like this single, like, fight kind of thing, but it's really good, and the villains... He's very, very interesting. He's not as sinister as Overhaul, not by a long shot, but he's just an interesting character. And then there's another arc that's going to come up. Oof. It's really... There's some good shit coming up for My Hero still. So I'm excited to see that stuff get animated. But, yeah, this arc right here with Overhaul and then the Big Three and all of that. Favorite arc of the series still. Love it. The animation, the work and money they put into that scene just to watch Deku punch the shit out of Overhaul right at the end was gorgeous. I haven't watched the episode yet, but, like, people uploaded the fight scene everywhere, and I've already seen the fight, so it's not a big deal for me to just have it spoiled before I watch the episode. That was beautiful. I'm so glad they really took the time to animate that fight, because it really showed, like, the meaning behind it, too. Like, not just, like, how, like, pretty it looked or how badass Deku looked, just, like, the whole meaning behind it and what was going on with Overhaul, Eri, Deku, Mirio, and Night Owl. Like, everyone's wills and, like, goals and dreams and hopes and all that shit packed into that one climactic scene where Deku's just like, fuck it. If the future's already been shot, I'll twist that. I was like, whoa, yes, so good, so good. So I'm glad a lot of people wild out for it. So cool. Just no more exciting stuff to My Hero still to come. In my opinion, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. I've been rewatching Bleach from, like, the beginning. I haven't watched in a few days just because I, like, straight binged, like, 150 something episodes. And I was like, okay, I need a few days. Because that was a lot. Not that I'm bored or anything, I'm just like, that was a lot. So I'm probably going to hop back on soon enough. I just have it play in the background while I'm writing and stuff since I've already seen the series. And just to refresh myself. So what I'm probably going to do is rewatch it all the way up through to where they have it animated, because the last arc isn't animated. And what I'm going to do is... What's it called? Finish that up, and then when I get the chance to read the manga again, I'll just reread the last arc. And then I'll kind of give, like, a retrospective, like, light overview episode of the podcast, just talking about Bleach and how I feel about it overall. Did it really fall off with this character? This? Was the Rukia Orihime, or the Rukia Orihime Ichigo love triangle thing, was it all that fun stuff. So we'll do that. But that's it for quick news. That was longer than I expected, but we did have a lot of quick news. Oh, no. One last thing. Byleth from Fire Emblem 3 Houses. Excuse me. Oh my god. From Fire Emblem 3 Houses, Byleth got added into Smash. So that's something, y'all. I know There are a lot of people not happy with that. If you don't know who, I believe I'm pronouncing their name right, it's Byleth, right? If you don't know who that is, Fire Emblem Three Houses, the main character that you play as, who is a professor at a school in the setting where you choose a house and you help them. Some shit goes down, time skip, and things get dark. I haven't played the game, so I don't know everything about it. But I've been already planning on getting the game soon enough when I have the chance and the money and the time to. But after seeing that Byleth trailer, I was like, oh, cool, I need to play Three Houses. I need to check it out. Now, was I a little disappointed that it was another Fire Emblem character? Like, because people were like, oh, and another Sword character. Two things. First off, look, I'm an asshole and I'm petty like I am. So, if you count the roster, if you're counting Echo Fighters as their own characters as well, because people are like, there's 8 Fire Emblem characters, 2 of them are Echoes, so if you actually want to count those, yes, there is 8 with the inclusion of Byleth. So, and the Mii Fighters as their own separate characters, they all have different fighting styles. There's 80 characters in Smash, as of now, not counting the Season 2 pass. If we're counting base roster, Season 1 pass, and Piranha Plant, excuse me, there's 80 characters total. Now, out of those 80 characters, 18 of them use swords. That leaves 16 characters. And this is me counting all the links. They're each their own individual character, so 3 links, that's 3 swords. Pit and Dark Pit, I'll count, because I know there will probably be a debate around them, so I'm just going to count them as sword users. And I'm counting the Echo for the Fire Emblem sword users. 18 characters in the Mii Sword Fighter and stuff. That leaves 62 other playable characters. So first of all, too many sword characters, that's 22% of the roster. That may seem big, but that's not even a fourth of the roster. It's a few little points shy of that. And also, if you're like, okay, well, what if we don't count Echoes? Okay, if we're not counting Echoes, that means there's 13 sword fighters. And if you do that, that leaves a total of 60 playable characters that don't use swords, so it's 2 less than before. But if you do that percentage-wise, that's 17% of the roster. It's like 17 point something. So that's even less than the 22. There's not too many sword fighters. They take up a very small portion of the roster. And regardless if you're mad about Byleth or not, play as the other 79 playable people available to you. If you're tired of sword fighters, play as the other 62 characters available to you. There's not too many sword fighters. I can understand the disappointment of it being Byleth because you expect like something third party and exciting. And while I do think Byleth probably should have been announced earlier, they probably have their reason for announcing Byleth last. Maybe just, production time, making the character. Excuse me. Also, a new pass got announced for Fire Emblem Three Houses, so maybe no, because Sakurai said even a lot of people working in Nintendo didn't really know who the last character was going to be, so they couldn't have planned it like that. I think it was just production time. Maybe that one took longer to do than the other 4, but I do believe Byleth should have probably been the second or third person announced. I don't want to say first, because you don't want to start off with Byleth. Joker being the first DLC character announced was hype. So yeah, maybe second or third. What they could have done maybe is done Joker, then Byleth, then done the dual reveal for here. Or, better yet, Joker, Byleth, Terry, then done the dual reveal for Hero and Banjo right at the end. As that, ending hype, one of the higher requested characters in Japan, and one of the higher requested characters in the West at the same time, right at the end. That would have been cool. Like I said, maybe, certain characters took a certain amount of time to make. They decided on them at different times, da-da-da-da-da. Whatever. It's okay to be disappointed in it, and, maybe wanted something more hype. I wanted Dante or Monster Hunter or something like that. It's still an interesting character, but people are like, whoa, we should fire Sakurai for ruining Smash. I'm sorry, what? She added a character that you don't have to buy? And you want to be mad about it and want Sakurai to lose his job? This is Sakurai's creation, first off. If he wants to add a fucking character, regardless of how you feel about it, he should be able to do that. Don't buy the character. You don't have to get it. It's not going to hurt your gameplay experience if you get it or not. So who cares? Like, if you're disappointed in it and you don't really want it, fair enough, dude. I feel you. Cool. Don't get it. Now, if you're one of those fucking people who got the season pass before knowing what characters are going to be on it, and you're bitching about the characters and how you paid money for characters you don't like, that's your fault. Maybe not buy a mystery pass. Maybe wait and see what comes up and then make your decision. Just like, I don't know how you're going to be mad about something you took a chance on. So don't do that same shit with this Season 2 pass, because we got 6 more characters coming. They've apparently all already been decided on, because the Byleth trailer, that the Byleth presentation that they showed yesterday was recorded back in November. So they're already pretty much in development of these next DLC characters. And they've already been picked, so don't bother asking or making requests for characters, because they've already been decided upon. We'll see what happens. But my thing is, y'all are so salty. They're like, oh, it's not a third-party character. Some of y'all, I'm just like, we got like 4 characters that were like not from Nintendo exclusively on the pass. We got Joker from Persona, Hero from Dragon Quest, Banjo and Kazooie from Banjo-Kazooie, and we got Terry from King of Fighters Fatal Fury. And then we get one character from a Nintendo IP, and then everyone's just like, this is bullshit! It's just like, oh, I'm sorry that there's a Nintendo character in a Nintendo game. Like, Fire Emblem Three Houses recently released. It made a good amount of money. It's very popular currently, especially with a lot of Fire Emblem fans. So, it's something that was unexpected for me, mainly because, I hadn't played Three Houses yet, so I wasn't thinking about it. But at the same time, it is the safe pick, and it is kind of like an obvious choice when you think about it. So there is that sense of disappointment, but at the same time, Byleth looks cool, and he's not just a sword character. He has 4 weapons that get equal amounts of use if you're really watching the direct. Like, you're not exclusively going to be using the sword, and then, like, his specials involve the other 3 weapons. Even, like, his smash attacks involve the other 3 weapons. So you're always going to be using something different. You're not going to exclusively be using the sword 90% of the time. And it's like a whipping kind of sword thing, so it's just like, he doesn't really play like any of the other Fire Emblem characters, so be over that shit, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like, it's okay to show some disappointment and some disdain, but like, to be this righty over it is such a like childish thing. That's all I gotta say about that. Am I excited for Byleth? Yes, because he looks fun. He looks like a fun character. I'm going to definitely try him out. He comes out January 28th. If you have the Fighter's Pass, you're going to get him initially, like, immediately once it's out. It'll download onto your Switch. If you don't have the Fighter's Pass and you want to buy Byleth, you can buy Byleth for $5.99 or $6.99, something like that. And you can buy them individually. And it comes with the stage and the music tracks that come with Byleth. Also, Byleth, like the other Fire Emblem protagonists that get added to the game from like the recent games, like Robin and Corrin, also has the female gender counterpart. Pretty much the games where you can create your dragon, your Fire Emblem character, have the dual genders, like the male and the female one. So, Byleth is no different. There is the female version of Byleth. So, boom, boom, boom. Everyone wins. Now, moving on, that quick news took a lot longer than I thought, but there's a lot of stuff that happened this week, if you really think about it, with the delays and all that, and the music, and me talking about the anime, and getting into Byleth, and blah, 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 blah. Let's talk Yu Yu Hakusho really quick, because this is the first episode review retrospective thing that I want to do, and these will probably be a little, like, vary in length, depending on the episode. But I feel like the first episode is really straightforward and probably won't take that long to really get into. So, just going over the first episode alone, one thing I want to point out that I don't think I've ever pointed out before, I really like the sudden, like, how it starts off, like, showing the overhead shot of the city from the sky and the clouds parting. You're just like, oh, so this is the city the story's going to take place in. And this chill, like, kind of like old 90s chill music is playing. And then all of a sudden Yusuke gets hit by a car. Like, he pushes the kid out of the way, boom! That's how it starts. So within, 20 seconds of the episode actually starting, after the theme song and everything, Yusuke gets hit by a car. It does not beat around the bush. That nigga is dead. From the start, he sees his spirit, and they do the whole, classic cliche of, you may wonder why I got here kind of thing. But one thing I always say about, stories is, especially now in this day and age, so many ideas have been used before. You're most likely going to do some kind of, writing trick or style or some kind of format thing within storytelling that's already been done many times before. And it's not you can't be original, but it's not a bad thing to use those kind of ideas or cliches. It just matters how you use that idea or cliche. And I think Yu Yu Hakusho executes that really well. Because he gets they do the classic of how did I even get here kind of thing. And it shows the school, and you're introduced to Keiko and Yusuke initially. Because when Yusuke gets hit, you don't even really know who Yusuke is. He's kind of angry, and he's kind of trying to fight the paramedics off. Even though he's a ghost, and he can't really do that. But you're well, I mean, it's kind of a shocking thing. Maybe he's just angry in the moment. We don't know what kind of kid Yusuke is just yet. So when it immediately gets there, you hear, when it shows the school from earlier in that day, you immediately hear on the loudspeaker, a teacher looking for Yusuke. And Yusuke's on the roof, chilling, ditching school. So we already know right off the bat from that point, Yusuke is not a goody-goody. We don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy yet, but he is some kind of delinquent. We're introduced to Keiko, who always seems to be looking out for him. And she does this kind of she does an info dump, essentially, but I feel the way she does the info dump works for her character. So it's one of those things where, she's oh, you do this and this, it lowers our class attendance, da-da-da-da-da, you'll never graduate middle school. But Keiko is that kind of person to say that. Because whereas Yusuke's kind of the delinquent, Keiko is kind of the good-natured, good student, good girl kind of thing that we see from her throughout the series, and she kind of slightly changes from that, but in her own little way, she still stays the same. So when she does that, yeah, it's an info dump, but it's that's her. That's something she would say. She's nagging him, and which she always does, because she's looking out for him. So when she nags him, that's just kind of her character. So we see that consistently with her, so I wouldn't really it's not one of those one-off info dumps just to give you information. It's one of those things where it's let's give you information about Yusuke while also showing off Keiko as a person. So right off the bat, we're getting really, really quickly first impressions of how we're supposed to perceive these characters. And it may sound like I'm digging too deep into it, but if you've watched Yu Yu Hakusho as many times as me, you start to notice little things every time you rewatch it. So there's that kind of thing. And, Yusuke plays her off, and little middle school pervert kid, Keiko they do the classic little anime, slap, get off me. Generic little cheesy jokes, but they're kids, they're young, so it just kind of adds to their relationship. You can tell from that they've known each other for a good while. And then even you get more insight on Yusuke when he leaves and Keiko's friends show up and they're terrified of Yusuke. Yusuke is clearly some kind of delinquent, but Keiko, I guess, has known him long enough to know that he has a good heart and he can be a gentle kind of person. But I guess Yusuke has built up this reputation to at least bring up rumors that he's violent and murderous, and he once beat up 100 kids by himself, or he has a whole army, a biker gang army with him. These rumors just spreading around just because he's that badass of a student or a delinquent. I wouldn't even call him a student, really. So much so that even kids at the school will use his name in lies to intimidate and threaten people. These two kids, one guy was I told him Urameshi was my cousin, and the dude just dropped his wallet and ran. That's how powerful Yusuke's name is in the school. Yusuke is not some no-name kid. Other gangs know him on the street. He's the toughest kid at the school. No one fucks with him. So his name brings power, but also there's a lot of teachers that don't really like him. But these teachers are the kind of teachers, when you're young and you're like, oh, the school's out to get me. Like, these teachers are out to get me. These dudes were 100% out to get this kid from day fucking one. They do not like him, and they're not good people. You can tell, just because they have the sinister, I'm a bad person kind of look going for them, and the whole sound of their voice. But also, it shows there are teachers out there, especially middle school and high school, who care about I guess their own reputation or the school's reputation more than an actual student and how they feel about stuff. So I guess you could say something like that for Yusuke is that situation is real life personified in a sense. So I can vibe with that. So Yusuke's whatever, and he's gonna ditch school, and it's one of those things where he's the one time I decide to go to school, so he skips class often. But then there's one teacher, I believe he might even be the principal of the school. I believe again. I gotta recheck that really quick. But his name is Iwamoto. Stops him, tries to drag him back in, and even though he's really tough and stern, kind of teacher dude, he actually wants Yusuke to go to school and study and work. So it's one of those teachers that does have your best interest at heart, even though he's tough. Yusuke gets away with it from him, so we can see they kind of have a usual back and forth too. So we see this dynamic. We're already introduced to. So within that scene, I believe that's not even 5 minutes. We already know who Yusuke is, kind of all around as a character. He's tough. He's a delinquent. He ditches class a lot. He doesn't seem to care about stuff. His name means power on the streets. And he kind of has a kinder side, according to Keiko. So we know that kind of stuff. He goes home. His mom's kind of like a drunk who's always nagging him too. So we kind of get this sense that Yusuke doesn't feel like he fits where he lives. Currently in life, he's not vibing to it at all. Which is probably what ended up making him a delinquent in the first place. His whole mood and nature due to his environment. But then there's one thing that puts a smile on his face that kind of becomes a constant theme throughout the show. You notice the only time when Yusuke really seems to be happy is when he's in a good little scrap or in a fight. One of those rare occasions where you see a smile on his face. And that's when we're introduced to Kazuma Kuwabara. Kuwabara is Yusuke's rival and one of the main characters of Yu Yu Hakusho. He is a student that also attends Sanyaski Junior High, and he's noted as the second toughest kid there because he can't beat Yusuke. And we can already tell looking at Kuwabara, some bruises, not just his ugly face, but some bruises. Yusuke comments, he's like, oh wow, you're actually conscious. It's crazy to see you like this. So I already know they already have some kind of dynamic going. We don't know how it's gone, how it really goes down, until Yusuke beats him down real easily within a couple of seconds. And it shows Yusuke was in a terrible mood, but as soon as he saw Kuwabara, kicked his ass and left, really changed his whole attitude into a smile again. And we see that from Kuwabara's little underling friends, that Kuwabara has yet to beat Yusuke in a fight, and he's lost, I think, 100 and something times already against him. But Kuwabara doesn't want to give up. So we know Kuwabara might be a reoccurring character. If you're new to the series and you didn't see the opening, you're probably just I wonder how important Kuwabara is going to be. If you're not an opening skipper, though, you clearly saw his spirit sword, so you know what goes down. Then we kind of get that full circle moment. Yusuke's walking down the street, kids playing ball. Ball rolls into the street. He was going to go try to get it. It's dangerous. And then we do see that kinder side that Keiko brought up. Keiko brought up that he does have a more gentler side. Still had yet to see it, and now we get to see it. He warns the kid gets emotional, and Yusuke acts like a big-ass goofball to cheer the kid up. And so he put a smile back on the kid's face, tells the kid, hey, stop playing ball in the street. They go their separate ways. The kid continues to play ball by the street. And Yusuke's he can get hit for all I care. And then, boom, ball rolls into the street, kid goes to get it, car speeding down the road, full circle, Yusuke gets hit by the car. He's now dead. So, in the first half of the episode, they pretty much introduce you to all around who Yusuke is and kind of some of the people around him in his life. We saw Keiko, we saw one of the evil-ass teachers, we saw Iwamoto, who wants what's best for him, we saw his mom, and we saw Kuwabara. And now Yusuke is dead. From there, we are introduced to Botan once Yusuke realizes he's dead. And according to Botan, she is the pilot of the River Styx. Oh my god, dude. I'm sorry. Sheesh, let me get some of that water. And from here, if you've seen the series, you know the whole story. She's offering Yusuke a second chance at life due to the fact that from what we saw from Yusuke's character and what they knew from Yusuke's character, I guess they weren't even expecting him to do such a good deed because he wasn't supposed to die by getting hit by a car at the age of 14. He not even close. He was supposed to live a good bit longer than that, I believe, is what they were saying. And it was not his time. But even Spirit World, according to what they had documented on him, did not expect him to jump in the way of a car and save a kid. So they don't have a place set up for him yet. The Spirit World in Yu Yu Hakusho is based off old like Chinese, Japanese myths of like ogres running the place in King Yama and all these other places in Spirit World. It's kind of run like a business essentially. But we'll get to that when we get to episode 2. So they don't have a place ready for Yusuke yet. So pretty much he died too early. So the whole situation that springs up that then makes the series what the series is that Yusuke needs to go through an ordeal to get his life back. They're offering him a second chance, but he has to do a couple things in order for that to work out. Yusuke then sees the boy in the hospital, as a ghost, of course. Him and Botan visit. And it turns out the kid wasn't even going to be killed by the car if Yusuke hadn't even gotten involved. The car would have swerved out of the way and just in time, and the kid wouldn't have even gotten hit. He might have gotten a few scrapes from falling over. So, it was a good deed that was unnecessary even. So, all the more reason why Yusuke gets a second chance at life. And initially, Yusuke is like, I don't really think I should come back. Because from what we saw in the first half of the episode, the way Yusuke thinks about it is, nobody fucking cares. Everyone's either nagging him or thinking he's this evil bad dude or bothering him. And he doesn't want to deal with it anymore. And he just feels like, hey, they might be better off if I wasn't here. And so Botan shows him his wake. So everyone's there. The school's there, like a class, like his classmates are there, probably out of courtesy from the school. His mom's not saying anything. She's just kind of cramped up in a corner as people come by to pay their respects. And the thing that makes Yusuke change his mind about taking the whole ordeal or not is the people who actually come visit and genuinely pay their respects. First and foremost, Keiko's there, and she's crying. She's a wreck. Of course Keiko's crying. So, that one person that cares about him, childhood friend. So we got that one. Kuwabara then shows up, which is really shocking to Yusuke, even though, because they're supposed to be rivals. Kuwabara actually, in a sense, had such a strong bond to Yusuke due to that rivalry. Winning or losing or not, he had felt something from that, and it gave him a goal to strive towards. So without Yusuke being there, he can't ever get a chance to beat Yusuke. So who is he going to fight? Who's going to make him tougher? What is he going to strive for? What does he have left? And we see that a lot from Kuwabara's character as he evolves and what he ends up becoming and needs to become. But that's a second person that, actually cared about Yusuke, in a sense, at least. Then we see the first evil teacher talking to the other second one we get introduced to, the fucking rat tooth one, talking straight trash, saying shit like Yusuke was trying to push that kid and rob him for his lunch money, glad he's gone, and this and that. Then we see Iwamoto pop up, and reprimand these two. Just like, how are you saying that at somebody's fucking wake? Like, is that how cruel you can be? And even he comes pays his respects, and even he tears up and cries because he saw that Yusuke could have done something with his life. And in a sense, Yusuke ends up doing something with his life, just not what was expected from Iwamoto. So then that's 3. The mom of the child who almost got hit by the car, and the child himself show up, and the kid doesn't understand that Yusuke's dead. He thinks he's just sleeping, and he wants to play with him again. And that just really tugs at your heart. Like, this kid that barely even knew him, even he's just like, oh, I like that guy. He was a nice dude. And then you just see Yusuke's mom break down in tears. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, people care about him. Plenty of people right there. 5 people right off the bat. And Yusuke sees that, changes his mind. And he's like, all right, I'll do it. I'll get my life back. So again, we kind of see this more gentle nature to Yusuke, because at first he's playing it off all really like cool and nonchalant. He's just like, people didn't like me anyway. People probably don't want me around. I'll just stay dead. But as soon as he saw like friends, loved ones, like people that actually cared about him in a sense, devastated and impacted by his death, he's like, I have to go back for them. And that's a theme you see from Yusuke. Yusuke is definitely like a badass, delinquent, smart mouth kind of kid. But when it comes down to it, he does have a kinder heart, because he always comes back for the homies, essentially. And that's going to be a constant thing for him. And the whole thing with him actually being happy while he's fighting, and this and that, just go into his character when it builds up into what he eventually finds, like his whole goal, his whole meaning in life itself. So the story begins like that. So if I had to review this episode, I think the first episode of Yu Yu Hakusho, if I'm really me thinking of it objectively, because subjectively every episode of Yu Yu Hakusho is a 10 out of 10 for me, but objectively thinking of like the overall episode, how it's a shonen, but there's not really a lot of action in the initial episode. It really lays out character groundwork. Even still, I'd still give it a solid 8. Like, this is a solid start to an anime, to a series, because you're already intrigued. You get introduced to this character and like a few people around him, and you see like these two halves of the person, like that surface level, like toughness, and deeper down that like kinder side. And plus, we don't know where the story's headed if you haven't watched it before. So now we get into this arc where Yusuke has to spend time trying to come back to life. So you probably are intrigued to see where it goes next, especially since Botan tells them they're headed straight to Spirit World as the episode ends. And so next week, we'll get into the episode about Yusuke going to Spirit World, meeting Koenma for the first time, and getting introduced to the whole ordeal he'll have to go through. And trying to make sure his body doesn't get cremated before he even gets a chance to go through the ordeal. So that's the whole first episode of Yu Yu Hakusho. Looking back on it, objectively, I would say it's a solid 8 out of 10 episode. I think it's, while it lacks some, like, action that people would, like, find intriguing in the start of a shonen, it makes up for it with, like, this really interesting and dynamic main character. I feel like there's not a lot of people, or not a lot of shonen protagonists, who actually have that exact quirkiness of a personality like Yusuke. Like, on the surface level, it's just like, what do you mean? Like, tough guy badass with, like, kind of a kind heart? There's a ton of people like that. I mean, yeah, but, like, specifically Yusuke, from what you see from that first episode, I think that's a character that's really hard to replicate. And if you do replicate it, it's really hard to replicate well. One thing that, I think Togashi does really well is make his characters really dynamic and unique in a way where even if someone tried to imitate that character, it wouldn't be the same. Like, his character's a classic. Like for Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter, I feel like those are, like, these classic, timeless characters that could be similar to other people. Maybe characters in other stories from the present and the past have similarities to them, but you'll never get that genuine character that Togashi. There'll never be another Yusuke. There'll never be another Kuwabara. You know, those characters are those characters. you can say, oh, it reminds me of this. Like, Okuyasu from JoJo's Part 4 reminds me of Kuwabara. But they're still very different characters with very different goals, very different meanings, this and that. But they have some similar base personality traits, if that makes sense. So, next week we'll do the whole Koenma thing with Spirit World, Yusuke's body getting cremated, all of that. But that's pretty much how I'll do the retrospectives. It's just like an in general review of the episode, how I feel about certain things, certain little things that caught my attention, and just kind of try to give an objective rating of each episode. But honestly, I think it was a solid 8 out of 10 episode, if I had to think about it objectively. That's me being 100% honest. Subjectively, like me personally, 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10. But yeah. So, there's that. So, hopefully, we'll work on that to improve on it, too. But, cool. We still have a good chunk of time left. So, I might not be able to get into the Tales of Vesperia First Impressions. It just all depends on how long I talk about Valkyria Chronicles 4. So, Valkyria Chronicles 4, that's, like, a lot to say. I'm just gonna shorten it to VC4. Just because I feel like that's a lot easier. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so, let's get into the review of this. First and foremost, I want to say, I like the game. I like the game a lot. Is it one of my favorites ever? No, but it was a good experience. I had a good time, and it was something different. It was really, I can say that it's something I haven't really played before. I mean, I guess in a sense, if I have to, like, compare it to other games, it's like something like Fire Emblem and, like, XCOM and stuff like that. If you play games like that, you'll probably enjoy the way Valkyria Chronicles plays. First and foremost, VC4 takes place, excuse me, in kind of like an alternate world history, if that makes sense. Like, it's like a parallel universe World War II setting. It's called the Second European War, but it's pretty much based off the whole idea of World War II. Valkyria Chronicles 4, though the fourth entry in the game, in the series, I believe VC4 takes place around the same time as the other VCs. Like, from what I've seen online, a lot of people were saying, like, you could play them in any order, but people say, like, the better games are definitely VC1 and VC4, from what I've been seeing overall. But people also say VC2 and 3 are worth playing. VC2 and 3 are PSP ports, so I can probably get an emulator. I actually did have an emulator for Valkyria Chronicles 2. The only reason why I didn't finish the game was because my emulator was acting up, so it would move really slow. So it was just hard to get through it just because sometimes I get, like, some really bad frame rate drops. And it would take forever to get through a fight because everything was going so slow. And some of those battles already initially take a minute to do, so you get the idea. So maybe I'll try again sometime soon. VC3 is probably going to be the more difficult one to play because it never got a Western release. I think because VC2 didn't sell as well as they hoped to, at least not in the West. So they didn't put out VC3 in the West as well. The only reason why VC4 probably got released in the West is just because the first Valkyria Chronicles sold really well, and that was like the first mainline title back on console since the first one. Because 2 and 3 were both PSP releases. So there's a lot of differences between those and the main series games. So this one is more closely related in form and structure to the first game. And then there's Valkyria Chronicles Revolution, which is another alternate universe kind of timeline, separate from the mainline 4 games. But a lot of VC fans tell me, don't even play that game. It's not worth it. So I probably won't play it. Maybe I will play it if I can find the game on a discount or for free, just to see what they're talking about. It looked really weird, though. But yeah, so pretty much the Valkyria Chronicles, the VC series, think of it as alternate universe, and we're in World War II, but it's called the Second European War. Oh my gosh, dude, this cough is killing me. So, 4 takes place revolving around this unit called Squad Z, or Squad E. Squad E. Why did I say Squad Z? They have an EZ written on like their gear, like printed on their gear. That's probably why. It's Squad E. Squad E is like this team of elites. They took this thing called the Ranger course that you learn about them taking the Ranger course in the storyline. But they're highly trained. They took like the toughest course. They're the highest of the high, and it's a smaller unit. It grows larger. You get little team members as you go through. But the main characters you need to know about are Claude. Claude is the leader of the whole squad. Claude is a scout unit. I'll get into the units in a second if you haven't played VC before, but he mainly takes place commanding and leading the group in a tank, which seems to be what the main character of the first Valkyria Chronicles does as well. He's the leader of the unit, but he's in a tank and giving out orders from the tank. So there's that. You have Raz, who is another high-ranking member on the team. He's a shock trooper unit, and he's kind of like your muscle kind of main character dude. He seems smart enough, but he just seems really stubborn and headstrong. Like, he really likes to charge into battle, guns blazing. He proclaims himself to be Raz the Invincible. And he always gets himself into trouble, even though without him around in certain situations, they might be doomed because, he's a strong guy. So what ends up usually happening is the team sniper and another high-ranking member on your team, Kai, she ends up having to always back him up or save his butt if he gets himself into more than he can chew on. She's an ace sniper, and they call her Deadeye Kai as a nickname. You have your tank operator, Miles. Miles isn't like a main character, but Miles, he's the one driving your tank and shooting while Claude gives out orders from the tank. And then, in way early in like chapter 2 or 3, you get introduced to another main character named Riley. Riley is mainly a scientist, but she ends up joining your team, and she's a new unit. She's a main character, and she's classed as a unit type of troop that is new to the VC series in general, called a Grenadier. And Riley, Kai, Claude, and Raz all know of each other because they all grew up in the same hometown. But initially, Riley fucking wants nothing to do with Claude and even slaps him upon seeing him, calling him a coward. So you wonder how things are going to unfold from there. But they're a small team, and as you play through the game, your main hub is like Claude's journal. So he writes in a journal as he goes over the events that they're going through during the war, their battles, their struggles, their downtime, all of that. So you have your main hub in that book. So you pick a story chapter to go to the next battle or cutscene for that, side stories, DLCs, saving the game, going to headquarters to do other things. But your story is, originally your team is paired up to help lead an operation called Operation Northern Cross, which is supposed to pretty much entrap and box in the enemy to force them to surrender, thus helping end the war or leading to a major blow to the enemy team for the war. And shit does not go as planned. I would say more about the story, but if I was to say more than that, I would lead into some plot spoilers that I'd rather not do. Like, I'd rather you guys actually play this game and get a first-hand look into it. If someone wants to know the full story, I'll just kind of watch the cutscenes again, because I can just look at the cutscenes during the game just to refresh myself over the course of the whole story, and I can just give a brief story synopsis during a podcast or something, if somebody wants me to do that. But I'll keep it non-spoilery as possible. But yeah, that's pretty much the plot of it. The overall plot for me playing the game personally, I give it, the story is like a 7.5. It's not bad. There's just, I feel like, you know what? No. Yeah, no, I give it a 7.5. It's a solid story. It's not terrible, but there were a few moments that blew me away, which is why I'm putting it at a 7.5. I don't want to put it at an 8, though, because I feel like 8 and above is when your story's that was great. I feel like there are a few things that kind of fell flat, Like, maybe, like, here and there. It's not, like, major stuff, but I feel like all that stuff added together, I don't want to say it's 8. I can't, in a good conscience, like, put it up that high. But the story is really good. It keeps you engaged throughout, and there are a lot of, like, big what the fuck moments throughout the story, especially personally for me, since I've never really played through a whole VC game. So maybe there's certain things that might seem more obvious to others that weren't to me, but a lot of big wow factors for me. But there is also a lot of stuff that I feel fell flat, including just like certain fates to characters that happen, like certain enemies, like certain fates they suffered. One specifically, I'm just like, really though. There are some tragedies on the good guy side too on your team. I won't get too deep into that though, because that's spoilery territory. I might have even brought it up in a previous podcast and already have spoiled it, but if you hadn't listened to it, then you hadn't listened to it. But yeah, the story's pretty solid. It's you going through these missions, mainly Operation Northern Cross, to try to make it succeed. And throughout the game, the battles get more and more difficult and intense, and certain challenges will happen. Like, maybe you're cut off from radio contact with the team. Maybe you have to hold out for a couple of turns until something happens. Maybe you have to escape. It all depends, and the maps could lead to, like, certain things. Like, there's a part where you're traveling up the mountain through snow, and the snow slows you down because you guys don't have your snow gear either, so you're, like, cold. You're more susceptible to damage. There's a permadeath factor for non-main character squad members, where if they die on the battlefield, like when you run out of HP, you go like unconscious, like you fall over. But if a team member gets to you in time, or some other means that you unlock throughout the game, you're taken to the infirmary and your character survives. And then the following turn, you can call them back to the battlefield. You just have to wait for them to get back on the field. But if you wait 3 turns before getting that member up, or the enemy like walks over and touches them before you do, they die permanently. they pass on. If it's one of the main characters, if that happens, they just retreat. So, because they can't permadeath, because they have to be involved in the plot. So, they'll just retreat. But any other one that's not a main character, they will die. It sucks. Don't let it happen. I made sure it didn't happen. I replayed. It only happened to me once where a team member died, and I replayed that mission just so they wouldn't die. And it wasn't like I didn't even like the squad member that much. It was the fact that like they leave mementos, like they leave you stuff in their wills, and that like really fucking got to me. Like, I didn't even like the character that much, but I was like, fuck, I didn't want him to die. And they're like, they left you this. And I was like, I have to go back. I have to replay this mission, because I don't... Ugh. There is something... this isn't really spoilery. In the endgame, you unlock a method of being able to pay a certain amount of money and revive dead characters for, endgame stuff. So they may be dead in your main story or stuff like that. But... even bringing them back, you could probably use them for main story missions, but if you had units you wanted to use for endgame content, you can revive them back. And that way you can keep their mementos, because their mementos are actually items and accessories you can use for stat stuff. So that's kind of cool. So that's endgame, though. You can't do that during the main plot. So during your main story run-through, if they die, they die. So that brings me up to, like, the gameplay. So the gameplay I actually give an 8.5. I actually really like the way the gameplay played. Like I was saying, the gameplay played. Like I was saying before, it plays very similar. Like, if you had to compare it to something, I'd say it's like XCOM meets Fire Emblem. Like, it's those style kind of games with the grid format and taking turns. Like, first turn, your team moves. Like, you move all your units, and then the enemy team moves all their units back and forth. But there are a few differences between that, especially in Fire Emblem. And, so, it's a shooter, because it's war, so you have your different troops. There are 6 unit types. There's scouts. Scouts are kind of like your generic, like, infantrymen. They have the best movement in the game, though. And standard damage, their weapon of choice is a rifle. They can also throw grenades, and when you level them up to like an elite class, they get a boost to their overall stats, and they're also able to use kind of like these mini mortar launchers. So they're like these like stronger grenade launcher kind of attacks that they can use, shoot from their guns. Movement is really important to this game because you want to position your units. You want to always try to position your units behind some cover. That way, an enemy can't. Usually, an enemy can't just straight up run over to you and just shoot you while you're in the open. You want to be down in some cover, especially if you're running into enemy fire to kill a unit. But then there's still 3 enemy units around. You don't want to be in the crossfire of that because they will gun you down. So scouts have really good movement to do that with, and they're kind of the more like balancey kind of character. Then there's shock troopers. Shock troopers are like your heavy attacker kind of people. They're the people you want in the front. They have less movement. It's like, I say in terms of movement, they're like third place of the 6 main units. They're third place. So there's scouts, and then there's someone else that's coming up, but their movement's third. They can't move as far as other units, but that's okay because they can take more damage than other units usually can, like them in another class. So if you are in a position where they're kind of taking fire, it's still, you want to keep them in some cover, but like it's a safer bet than having your scout out there in the open, if that makes sense. They use machine guns. They also, I believe they also have grenades, but when you elite them, they get flamethrowers attached to their machine guns. And the flamethrower doesn't have like a super far range, but it moves in an arc. So say if there's like 3 enemies like lined up side by side in front of you and you can reach with the flamethrower, you will hit all 3 of them with your flamethrower. So just keep that in mind. Machine guns also have higher rates of fire. So let's say like with a rifle you get like 5 shots. So maybe the rifle does more like overall base damage, but if you miss like 3 out of 5 of your shots, you've only hit twice. With a machine gun, you get like 20 rounds for your initial machine gun. So it's just like, oh, I have to hit you 4 times? Cool, I have 20 chances to do that. So there's that factor. So yeah, shock troopers are cool. I really like the shock troopers. Next unit up is the sniper unit. The sniper unit, they're one of the lower movement units. I don't think theirs is the lowest, though. I think they're probably like second to last in terms of movement. They can't go very far, but you kind of don't want them to because they're snipers. You want to keep them at a distance. You want to keep them at a distance, and you want to keep them at a place where like it's hard for them to be hit, but they have a better overall view of the map since they have the best range of fire out of any unit. Because they're snipers. Snipers are probably one of my favorite units to use purely because of that. It felt really epic to just get to an angle where it's just like, they're not going to get a chance to reach me, and just line up a shot, boom, take them out, and then have your scouts move in. Or if your scouts are being really like bundled down against like, say, enemy troops, you can have some snipers like move them over in position, take those enemies out so your scouts are safe for the enemy turn. So they're fun. When scouts become elites, they get something called interception fire, which I'll briefly cover, which is something every other unit initially has. Scouts or snipers do not until they become elite. And you can also unlock some sniper rifles that have higher rates of fire. So a rate of fire is like how many shots you do per turn. So in your turn, you can only, attack once unless an ability lets you attack again, do another action. And usually when a sniper rifle fires, it shows how much ammo you have for your sniper rifle and your rate of fire. So say if I have 3 sniper rifle bullets, but my rate of fire is 1. That means per action when I shoot, I can only shoot 1 bullet at a time. Makes sense for a sniper rifle. There are some sniper rifles you can get that have a rate of fire of 3. And that rate of fire of 3 still only counts as 1 bullet. So if I use 3 turns in a row, I can shoot 9 bullets, essentially. So that's something to take into consideration. So snipers are probably like my favorite unit, and then like the shock troopers and the scouts are cool. Then we move into like the next thing, which is lancers. Lancers, I believe, have the lowest rate of movement, if not the. So snipers probably have. Yeah, snipers are probably like 4th or 5th place, and lancers are like last place. I think lancers actually have the worst movement. Lancers are anti-tank units. They're heavily armored, so they do move. So I guess them having less movement is them representing them moving slower. But they can tank explosives really well. So like if they get shot by like a tank bullet or something, they're usually tank bullets like shells from a tank cannon. No, like they'll probably take a good chunk of damage. Not as much as other units though. But like stuff like grenades or like even like the mortars from a tank or like the elite scout mortars, they won't take that much damage from. Even like a grenadier's like grenade mortar, not a lot of damage taken. They really take those because they're supposed to be the guys walking up to a tank and shooting it. And they have these kind of like lance rocket launcher kind of things, which is why they're called lancers. And their accuracy isn't so good, but that's because they're built to be able to shoot at tanks. And the reason why they're so heavily armored is a lot of tanks have like a interception fire with machine guns. So you can walk while you're getting shot with a machine gun from a tank, barely take any damage, get close up to a tank's weak spot, and just shoot it and destroy it in like maybe like a single shot. So they're definitely the scariest things to tanks. They're the biggest threat to tanks, but even more so than another tank. So when there's tanks abound on the battlefield, you're gonna want them. You can also use their rockets on regular enemy units too, but you want to be close because, like I said, their accuracy is sloppy, so the shot can go completely above someone's head and miss. So they're definitely made for tank units. They only really get an overall stat boost when they become elites. They get like another type of lance rocket launcher weapon that's like closer range, but I think has like a little better accuracy and firepower. So like if you're not fighting tank units, but you have a lancer on the field, like those weapons are a little better for anti-personnel type stuff. So that's something to take into consideration. But lancers, usually you only want them on the field if you're fighting against tanked enemies, like tank enemies, if you want to be anti-tank. Engineers are next. Engineers are your support class. Engineers do the healing. They have the second best movement out of any unit. They also use rifles. They just do low damage because that's not what they're there for. When you walk by like a tank or even another enemy unit with an engineer, you automatically refill their ammo back to full. So you always want at least one engineer on the field. Everyone has this healing item called Ragnade. And with engineers, when they use Ragnade, they heal significantly more damage than any other unit would. And they have a repair kit, which is exclusive to them, and that's how you can repair your tanks if you need to repair your tanks or your other vehicles. So they're essential to the battlefield. They're probably one of your most essential units. If you go into battle, you should always have an engineer ready. I usually have like 2 for every battle I had, just so like if I had to split my team up to go different ways, I always had an engineer with one team each. So there's that. So they're cool. When they elite, their healing gets even better. Yeah, they don't really get any new weapons. Their stats get boosted like everyone else, and their healing capabilities get even fucking better. So, like, you can be low health, hit an engineer, get to an engineer, use Ragnade on you, and you'll be back close to full. The last unit is Grenadiers. Grenadiers are the newest unit in Valkyria Chronicles, and pretty much, they have grenade launchers, like mini grenade launchers with them. They're bulky and heavy, which makes them kind of like the second to last in terms of speed, in terms of like overall movement. They can't go very far. And also, they're vulnerable to interception fire when they're setting up their mortar, because they have to set up their little mini mortar launcher. to get ready so they can be shot at. Now, interception fire, because I'm about to run out of time, so real quick, let me just talk about interception fire. It's when it's your turn and you're moving. If you move within an enemy's range and they can notice you, they'll shoot at you, even though it's your turn. And even though it's less damage or something like that, you'll still take damage from interception fire. That's why I say always hide under cover after you shoot, because interception fire is a thing. But your team will also do the same thing. So if a unit's running up on like your group of 4 people, they will all just shoot him if he doesn't start setting up. When you're aiming your actual shots, interception fire doesn't happen. It's when you're moving around that interception fire will happen. So you got to be careful of that, especially with your grenadiers. So you also want to keep them at a distance, but they have a pretty good range, and they shoot overhead mortars with a wide blast radius, so they'll knock enemies away and can hit multiple enemies with a single mortar. If you target the right place on a tank, you can one-shot tanks. So they're pretty fun units to use, too. They're definitely good for clearing out major enemies, clearing out walls in the way, also good for tanks. They're not good against Lancers. You don't really want to use them against Lancers. You want to use, like, shock troopers or, like, a sniper to just take a Lancer out. It's probably your best bet. But those are the units. There's also tanks. Tanks don't really count as a unit just because you only get, like, a couple of them. But the tanks have low movement, but they have high defense because they're fucking tanks. They can shoot, like, little machine gun with interception fire. They have a mortar launcher with a wide blast radius, and they have, of course, their cannon shells. So there's that stuff. So those are your basic 7 units. The enemy team has those too, and you go back and forth shooting at each other. It's kind of like Fire Emblem or XCOM on a technical grid. That's the whole gameplay aspect. I talked about that a lot longer. So I'm probably going to run out of time on the podcast, but there's that. So the gameplay and the gameplay, I say 8.5, or even just like, a solid 8. Story 7.5. Characters. I might go into more character stuff next time too, just because like it was harder to get into the main topic just because the fucking quick news was so long. So maybe I'll get into the main character stuff next time. I'll also just go over the cutscenes again so I can talk about the characters. My favorite character though, Raz. 1000% my favorite character is Raz. I fucking love Raz. He's stupid. He charges in headstrong, but he has a heart of gold. And I don't know what it is about like those kinds of characters, but Raz is great. He is overall great. And he's a strong unit. He's a shock trooper. So I always have Raz charging in and just laying waste to enemies. Like, they'll shoot him and he'll be like, were you attacking me? I'm sorry. And then just end them. And when he gets the flamethrower, you can't even tell me nothing. Flamethrowers also ignore like cover, like if they're hiding behind like little sandbag covers. The flamethrower don't give a fuck about that. So, oh man, shock troopers are awesome. Raz is definitely my favorite character. Characters overall, I'd probably give a 7.5 to too. You know what? No, I give him an 8. If you're doing all the content in the game, like even little like side bits of dialogue you don't have to see, but you can see, I'd probably give him an 8 or even an 8.5. 8.5. I think the characters are the best part of VC4. So like characters like 8.5, even a 9. I won't say a 9. 8.5, gameplay like an 8, story 7.5. Extra features and like content and DLC and stuff, 9. This game has a ton of shit to do when you finish the game. I don't even want to give it individual scores because I think overall I'd say the game is a solid 8. 7.5 and an 8 depending on your experience and how much time you want to put into it. It's a great game. And if you're into games like Fire Emblem and XCOM, and if you're into games for the long run with a ton of endgame content to do, this is the game for you, definitely. Because it has skirmishes, which are little side battles you unlock throughout the story. But once you beat the game, you unlock hard skirmishes. So they're harder mode maps. And once I think they give you they start you off with 3, and once you finish the initial 3, you get another one, or maybe like another pack of 3, and you do those. And then I think there's another set of skirmishes you unlock that are even harder after that. And then there was some DLC called special, like, operations. They're just really, really harder skirmishes that you can unlock as DLC, and they're supposedly, like, brutal hard. Like, everyone's like, you just play them last when you've done everything else and are, like, as good as you can be. Because they get brutal. Some of those battles, they get so aggressive. Like, Grenadiers, like, with their interception fire, can be fucking ridiculously annoying. Your unit's just running across the map. Boom, you get smacked with a mortar grenade. And then, like, you're dazed and confused. You have, like, the dee sound. Like, you're dizzy, you're moving slower, so interception fire is shooting you in the face. The Grenadier's still throwing grenades at you. It's ridiculous. You want to take out Grenadiers pretty fast. How do you do that? Best way I say to take out a Grenadier is with another Grenadier. Or if you can get close enough with any other unit, just run up to them directly. If you're too close to them, they can't fire a mortar. Their range, when they shoot their mortars, it's in an arc. So once you get close enough in range to them, they can't hit you with their mortar, so then they're defenseless. And if you hit them with a mortar with another Grenadier, if you knock a Grenadier off their balance when they're set up, they're off balance. So they can't do interception fire anymore until it's their turn again, and they can set themselves back up. That's why I say the best way to do it is with another Grenadier, because even if you don't initially kill them, at least you stop their interception fire for that turn. But I kill them bitches. I hate them so much. If you can get to a sniper perch, because they like to hide in corners too, like snipers, so they can just sit in a pit and fire grenades. It's fun, dude. Like, if you're into tactics games, that's what it is. If you're into tactics games, this is definitely the game for you. Fun time with a pretty decent story with great characters. That's what I'll say. I really like the people in this storyline, and I feel like the story could have done a little more justice to the characters, which is kind of why I knock the story down a couple pegs. But the story is pretty solid. But I'll talk more about it probably next time. Maybe, like, briefly really go into it some more. If you want to hear, like, a spoilery kind of review of it, just let me know and I'll set up for that one day. But that's about it all the time we have. If I don't have a major topic next week, I'll probably just go ahead and do talk about more about VC4 and then give more try to give impressions of Tales of Vesperia. But that's about all the time I got for this week. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you think of this new, like, kind of like more of a structured setup. It should go by a little more smoother next week because I don't think we'll have as much quick news. So we'll see how that goes. But thank you guys for sticking around, and I'll catch you next week. Have a good weekend, and later.
Wow, spectacular. Gotta stand in the corner the way them cheeks be acting up. So much junk in the trunk, wonder what she packing for. Anytime you hit, she backing up, moving like some gelatin. Can't control the skeleton. Mouth open like a pelican, and no, it ain't my fault. I swear that ass control my thoughts. It's taking me on your money, can't believe the shit I bought. Had to rob my freaking grandma just to cover what I lost. That booty be squeezing out of them thigh highs like some toothpaste. She know what she doing when she bend over to tie her shoelace. She know it don't take that goddamn long for her to tie her shoelace. She hypnotized up her booty, she doing her duty. She looking back at me in my face. Boom, ba-doom, that ass. 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 I like the way that moves. 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 I like the way that moves.